So
There you
we're gonna practice.
There you go.
There you go. Can you hear and see us?
Hi, John. Hi. Yes,
Oh.
I can hear you. I can see you, John. I can hear you. And I heard
Good lighting. Does everything seem okay?
Yeah. Did you want to? Are you going to do the presentation?
Yeah. Should we practice sharing the screen right now?
Yeah, you might. Yeah, let's do that just to be on the safe side.
All right. So here we go.
Perfect.
All right.
Oh,
Okay, so you are good to go.
all right,
There
great.
you go.
Perfect. All
Okay,
right.
awesome. Great. Yeah. So what you can do is you can go ahead and turn your camera off and mute yourself, and then you can pop in when the chair calls your item for the public hearing.
And that'll be after Derek's presentation and the questions from the commissioners.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. See you soon. Hi, Rosario.
Hi, David.
Good. I can see you and I can hear you, and your logo is backwards, so you need to flip it.
Oh, let me use the other one. Okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, sure. There you go. You're all set. You're perfect now.
Great. See you then.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Thanks.
Hello? Is anybody here?
Yes, hello. You've reached
Oh, hi.
Hi, this is the Planning Commission meeting.
I wanted to just confirm this is the Planning Commission meeting for the Shoreham project?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
And-
and so I've never done this before. How do we participate?
Okay, what's your last four digits of your number you're calling from?
1020?
1020. Okay. And your first name?
Whitney, Whitney.
Okay. Okay, I will put you in the queue, Whitney. And just go ahead and you'll get 3 minutes to speak when we call on you when the item comes up for public comment. But you are in the right space.
And so and then I just watch it on channel 10? Is that how I get to see what's happening?
Yes, exactly. You can watch it on channel 10, or else if you can't, you can always just listen in through this format here on the phone. But yeah, channel 10 is your best bet.
And now is there like a live streaming of this thing?
It is live streamed, so it will begin
And so
exactly at 6:30.
But I mean, like, how do we watch it on the internet? And then can we participate more on the internet, or how does that work?
No, the only way you can participate is the way you're participating now is through your telephone. You can watch it live streamed on YouTube, on any Roku, Apple TV. Just look up WehoTV, or your City Channel 10 local cable channel.
Okay, so but the upcoming event for tonight, July 15th, if I click on this online, I'm just going to be watching it streaming then.
You're going to be watching it streaming live, yes.
And then the button where it says agenda, does that lay out? Okay, so that lays out the whole thing, right?
That lays out the whole agenda packet and the staff reports, exhibits, everything you need to know that's happening.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure, you're welcome.
I'm just going to stay on here, right?
Yes, just stay there, and then what I'll do is when it's time, I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and then you can come on and give your 3 minutes.
And that's *6, right?
That will be *6, yes.
Thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Hi, John. Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. Your logo is good.
Seeing a few.
Okay, see you in a bit. Hi, Michael.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good. Good. I can see you. I can hear you. Your logo is there. So you are all good.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hi, David.
Hi, Stacy. Hang on just a
How are
second.
you?
Let me find you here. I got quite a few people
My
here.
back.
There you are. Okay, I can hear you. I can see you. Oh, your background is the only thing missing.
Tell me if this works and if this is the right direction or if I need to switch it.
You need to flip it.
Okay.
There you go.
How's that?
Perfect. You're all good now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Thanks so much.
See you in a bit.
Sounds good. Thanks.
David, I'm curious out of curiosity, is my logo correct?
Hang on just a second. Let me see.
Sure.
You're good, Rick.
Okay, I'm not mirrored.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, this was a major accomplishment
How's
to get
mine?
this, I'll have to tell you.
Yeah. Jen, you're good too.
Thank you.
Were we supposed to depride ourselves? Am I supposed to go back to black?
Technically,
You do you,
yes,
Lynn.
but you can. Yeah, but you're pretty in the rainbows tonight. You can stay there.
I still have my rainbow.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, we can't be proud in July. We can only be proud in June.
oh gosh, I didn't get that memo. Sorry. Okay. 2-minute countdown. How we doing commissioner wise, David?
Chair, I believe we have all of our commissioners here already.
Yay, team.
So we're all good. We're just waiting for that 6:30 to hit.
Okie dokie. I'm gonna make sure all the devices are off. Okay.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, we are, social media is all online. Our cable channels are all live. It is 6:30 and we are good to go when you're ready to call it.
Missing Commissioner Caballero. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tonight. Okay, thank you. With that, David, I will call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the West Hollywood City Planning Commission. It is Thursday, July 15th. It is 6:30 p.m. And I will get out my sheet music and read the following. In compliance with California Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19, this Planning Commission meeting is being conducted via teleconference on the city's website and is also provided on a wide array of streaming media platforms to offer access to the public to the fullest extent possible. WehoTV staff has confirmed that this Planning Commission meeting is currently streaming successfully on Spectrum Channel 10 and online at weho.org/WehoTV. In addition, and as a courtesy, this meeting is also successfully streaming on the city's YouTube channel at youtube.com/WehoTV and on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. WehoTV staff monitor this broadcast on all platforms throughout the meeting and will notify the Planning Commission secretary should broadcast disruptions arise. Please do not interrupt the live meetings by calling or texting the planning commissioners about difficulties viewing the meeting. If you are experiencing viewing difficulties while watching this live stream, please reload the page or visit weho.org/WehoTV to access our official live stream and to view a list of other available streaming options. In addition, you may call in to listen to this meeting by dialing 669-900-6833. The meeting ID is 931-0013-8403, and then press the pound sign. Please understand that internet speeds, device reliability, third-party platform reliability, and individual or personal technical issues are out of the scope of this broadcast. WehoTV staff has published a guide at weho.org/WehoTV to troubleshoot your connection. If you are having difficulties connecting to the meeting, you can also call 323-848-3151. I had great hopes that that was the last time I was ever going to have to read that thing, but it's not looking so good right now. With that, item 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Derek, are you here? Could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think this is the first time I've done it virtually. Put your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Derek. Secretary Gillig, please call the roll.
Good evening, commissioners. Tonight we have 2 commissioners absent, excused. We have Commissioner Odetta, who will be absent, and Commissioner Thomas will be absent. So all roll call votes will reflect that. Commissioner Vinson.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Lombardi,
Here.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Here.
Vice Chair Jones,
Here.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Here.
and we have a quorum.
Thank you, David. Item 4, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I will
I'll
motion.
move.
Commissioner Lombardi, thank you for moving. Vice Chair Jones, I will promote you
I'll
to a
second.
seconder. With that, David, please call the vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Vinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the agenda for July 1st, 2021 is approved as presented.
July 15th,
Oh, I'm sorry, July 15th. I was looking at the minutes.
the minutes.
Yes. Thank you.
And that is the next item 5, approval of the minutes of the July 1st, 2021 meeting. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner
second.
Cavallaro, and a second from Vice Chair Jones. David, would you call the vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Vinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the motion passes, noting Commissioner Odetta and Commissioner Thomas absent for July 1st, 2021, as presented for the minutes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, public comment. David, do we have public this evening?
We do have public, but I have no public comment for this item.
Okay. That brings us to item 7, Director's Report. I heard the voice in the distance of Mr. Kehoe. There he is. Okay, take it away, John.
Good evening. It's nice to be here. John Kehoe, Director of Planning and Development Services. So a couple of updates for tonight. As you may recall, the City Council is going to have 2 council meetings next week. They're going to have a council meeting on July 19th, and there'll be one item from planning on that item, and that's the billboard at 9157 Sunset. There was originally going to be item 8752 Sunset, but that's been continued. On July 21st, that's a special meeting on Wednesday. We have a consent calendar item on how West Hollywood staff feels we should start to address returning to a somewhat normal when it comes to all the out zones on the restaurants, on the parking spaces and sidewalks and all sorts of activities that we did for change during the pandemic. So that's something to look forward to. Also, we'll be providing the council an update on the Robertson Lane project. The council specifically asked for that. Also, I want to make 2 other announcements. One has to do with what you were talking about earlier, Chair Hoopengartner. One of those 2 meetings, the City Council will be a hybrid meeting where it will be, some people will be live in City Council chambers, and then everybody else will still be online. As of today, there are no plans yet for us to go back to council chambers. So we're just holding on until the council tests it, see how it goes, and hopefully it goes well for the council, and then they will hopefully let us do that in the future. But as of right now, we're going to be virtual. The other thing I wanted to announce, and that's has to do with an educational program that's a requirement for all the planning commissioners and all other commissioner and board members. So the city is hosting 2 virtual sessions on racial justice conversation. That's going to be on July 28th. And it's best-selling author of White Fragility is going to be speaking, Dr. Robin DiAngelo. And so all the commissioners need to attend, and that's Thursday, July 28th, and it will be 6 to 7:30 p.m. for a virtual meeting with that. So and staff is also attending that. Staff will be attending that earlier in the day. So I look forward to that. And that's my comments for tonight.
Thank you, John. And in light of the County of Los Angeles re-upping the mask ordinance, I'm not terribly optimistic on us getting back together in the immediate future. Very sad to say. Okay, let's move on to item 8, items from commissioners. Does anyone have, Commissioner Vinson?
Mr. Kehoe touched on this, but I wanted to mention to remind everybody to sign up for the racial justice conversation with Dr. Robin DiAngelo. She's a New York Times bestseller of White Fragility and recently released her new book, Nice Racism, How Progressive White People Perpetuate Racial Harm. If you haven't received the invite, please ask staff. It's really important that everyone attends. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have items from commissioners? Seeing no hands raised, we will move on to item 9, consent calendar. There being none, we will move on to item 10, public hearings. Item A, 8760 Shoreham Drive. This is a request to demolish one existing 2-story commercial building and construct a new 3-story 11-unit multifamily residential building. And I believe Derek Purificacion is on deck.
Yes.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you. Yeah, let me just get situated here with my screen. Okay. Is everyone able to see that? Okay. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners and members of the public. Derek Purification, Associate Planner for the City of West Hollywood. I'll be presenting item 10A, which is located at 8760 Shoreham Drive. And just quick overview of the project. It's a proposed 3-story multifamily development of 11 units. It does have a subterranean garage as well as a modification for parking stall length. This project is categorically exempt from CEQA or per CEQA, and it's actually a project that was continued about a year ago on July 16th, 2020. This project was reviewed by the Planning Commission. Generally, the Commission supported the overall design, but there were 2 concerns that they did have. One of the concerns had to do with the parking garage. The garage itself, they felt that it was a little tight. Maneuverability was not ideal. Maybe 4 5-point turns the way it was being proposed. And so they felt that the applicant could revise that and come up with a better design. And the second concern had to do with the other modification request, which was to exceed the allowable 1,200 square foot average unit size. So the applicant had a modification. They wanted to exceed that number. The Commission felt that they weren't able to find a hardship in order to support that modification, and therefore they asked the applicant to revise the plan, remove that modification, and come back with a project that complied with the maximum average unit size. And since the project has been about a year since most of the commissioners have seen this project, or it may be new for some of the newer commissioners, I'll just do a quick overview of the existing property. So it's zoned R4A. That's a high density multifamily residential zone. It's also surrounded by other R4A properties. The lot size is approximately 10,000 square feet. And currently it's developed with a 2-story commercial building. This building was actually converted in 1993 from a duplex, and it turned into an office. And that was attached as an attachment to the staff report if you wanted to see the resolution on that. Here's an elevation of the north elevation, actually. So if you were standing on Shoreham Drive facing south, this is the elevation that you would see.
Derek, we're not seeing, we're just seeing your raw PowerPoint grid. We're not seeing your actual presentation.
Oh, okay.
If you have 2 monitors, you might be displaying the wrong monitor.
Let me see. Sorry about that. I try to do this the same way I shared it earlier. Let me try one more time. Is that any different?
That's much improved.
Better.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Where did I leave off? Oh, right. So the property, oh no, actually, let me go back here. Here we go. So this is the east elevation, as if you were standing on Sherborne Drive facing west. And here you can see that the building is 3 floors with a roof deck along this area. This would be the mezzanine area. Up here is a roof deck, and down here would be how you get into the subterranean garage. The subterranean garage, as I mentioned, it houses 23 parking spaces. These are all required parking spaces. Two of those spaces are ADA accessible, and those can be found here. Oops, sorry about that. It's actually here and here. 16 of those spaces are standard spaces. Standard parking space is 8.5 by 18. And 5 of those spaces are modified. So part of this modification, or that the applicant is requesting, is to modify the length of, or the depth of the parking space. So it would be reduced from 18 feet to 16 feet 2 inches. And those spaces, as far as the width goes, they'll vary anywhere between 9 feet and 9.5 feet in width. The backup space or the drive aisle, it'll vary anywhere between 24 to 26 feet. And you can see, where it kind of narrows down a little bit, that's where it would be 24 feet. Majority everywhere else, you'll see 26 feet. Just a quick overview of each floor plan. The basement floor plan and level 1 houses units 101, 102, as well as bicycle storage and mechanical rooms. Level 2 is houses units 201, 202, 203, 204. Each of these units all have private open space via balconies. On the 3rd floor, you're looking at units 301, 302, 303, 304. And on the, I guess you can say, the other level 3 and mezzanine level, it's just unit 401. That's going to be on the north side of the building. This next slide is the roof plan. Essentially, you'll see 3 roof decks. These are private open spaces for units 301, 302, and 401. Here you'll also see solar panels, as well as HVAC or mechanical equipment. And to just kind of go over real quick some of the changes that the applicant made. They'll actually go into a lot more detail, but just to kind of briefly go over it. Some of the obvious things that you'll notice on the right side of the slide is what they're proposing today. And on the left side is what they proposed last year at last planning commission. So as I mentioned, the commission felt that maneuverability was really tight with tandem parking spaces, a reduced backup space. You'd be making 4, maybe 5-point turns. These spaces here, which were the ADA spaces, some commissioners pointed out that the backup space here was really tight going into the elevator. So the applicant made some revisions. They took away majority of the tandem spaces, with the exception of 2 of them up here on your upper right-hand corner. And yeah, so they've been relocated to the other side. The parking spaces that are modified do have a wider space. So basically the rule of thumb that we gave them was, if you have the ideal backup space is 26 feet. If you were to reduce that, for every foot you reduce that backup space, then we require an additional 6 inches in width of the parking space. So for example, if you've got a 25-foot backup space, instead of a 8'6" width in parking stall, you would need a 9-foot width in parking stall. So that's what they've done here. And so that addressed concern 1. And then concern 2 had to do with the average unit size. So this is just an example of one of the floor plans. They kind of use the same formula on all three floor plans, but basically you'll see that the corridors were enlarged here, and as well as, you know, some of the balconies. So what this did is by increasing these either, you know, the private open space or common areas or hallways, it ate up into the, you know, the floor area of each unit, and therefore they were able to reduce square footages. And on this next slide, you'll be able to see how they were reduced. You'll see that open spaces were increased, floor spaces were reduced, and they were able to get to exactly 1,200 square feet for your average unit size. So some may be larger, some may be lower, but your average unit size is going to be 1,200 square feet, which is the maximum allowed in the R4 zone. So, you know, with all that being said, you know, the applicant has revised the project to address the Planning Commission's concerns from the last Planning Commission meeting last year. They were able to improve maneuverability in the garage. They removed the modification for the maximum average unit size. This project, it'll redevelop the underutilized property and also provide 9 net dwelling units. And so staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this project subject to the findings and conditions of approval set forth in the resolution 21-1409. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have questions for staff? Commissioner Lombardi?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Hoopen-Garner. I have just a couple of quick questions. Make sure I'm understanding the history. Being a newer commissioner, was anything reviewed by HPC? And could you maybe provide a recap if so?
As part of the revision, it didn't go back to HPC. Well, it never originally went to HPC. So there was an HRA that was done, so a historic evaluation basically of the property, and it was found that the property was not historic. But that review does not actually go to HPC. It's reviewed at staff level, where we have our consultant help us out with that and basically confirm what their consultant is saying, whether this property is considered historic or not. But you know, to kind of go back, since it's been revised, it did not have to go and submit a brand new HRA.
Okay. Were there any keynotes, 1 or 2 items as to why it was not deemed historic?
You know, offhand, I do not know that answer right offhand. I can go back to the HRA and take a look at the summary while you guys are deliberating.
That'd be great.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I saw also on the staff report, the existing property was converted to an office in 1993, and it's exempt from rent stabilization ordinance. Could you maybe explain that a little bit to people that may not understand?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, the property was converted from residential to commercial. As far as, you know, requiring, you know, affordable housing, that applies to residential units or residential buildings. So, you know, since this was converted to a commercial building, that actually does not apply in this situation.
Okay. So it only applies to something that's already currently residential. If it's a conversion from commercial to residential, then that requirement does not apply.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot with this one. Do you happen to know what the housing density of the site is with the current design in terms of units per acre? I'm asking because I'm just curious what that means in comparison to some of the assumptions that are used for the RENA housing assessment for the, you know, upcoming cycles, and whether this is matching to that density above or below.
Unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you.
Derek, is it built to the R4 standard maximum?
It is.
because the R4 is roughly 50 units per acre.
Which is above, was it 35 per acre? Is the
Is
assumption
R2.
for Rena?
I don't know that offhand,
Okay,
but this is our densest zone.
okay. Would this count toward the new cycle?
I believe so,
Okay,
but we would have to confirm that. I'd have to look at the numbers.
okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vincent, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you explain to those watching in the public how it works when you have a building on a hill, when, you know, the maximum height, 3-story versus 4-story, how that works?
Sure. It's you know, it's probably easier to show it on a visually, but essentially, you know, there's a couple different ways you can do it, but and there's a couple of things that you actually need to take into consideration. But essentially, the way it would work is you take the allowable height, or you take the height from grade at the higher level. You take that, in this instance, it's going to be 35 feet. And then at the lower level, you take that at 35 feet as well. And let's see if I can do this on camera. You have a 45-degree angle, and then it has to meet. So the applicant actually has a pretty good visual of that in their presentation, and I think they'll be able to go over with that. But that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is where you basically follow the grade, and essentially everywhere you go, wherever you take a measurement of the height, at that point, it can follow the grade. Now, with that being said, you also have, in this case, you have a mezzanine. Mezzanines, as long as your mezzanine does not take up more than 1/3 or 33.33% of the floor that it's above, then it's not considered an extra floor. So in this case, we have a mezzanine on the 3rd floor level, or visually it may look like a 4th, but since it's below the 1/3 of the floor below, then it does not count as an additional floor. So in this case, we've got 3 floors with a roof deck and a mezzanine.
Great. So that goes into my next question. So with the mezzanine, that doesn't count as a 4th floor. It counts as a mezzanine. So then it falls under, you just have a maximum building height, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So with your maximum building height, you've got 35 feet or 3 stories, I should say 3 stories. But yeah, so if you do have a mezzanine, you still have to be below that maximum height.
Okay. And then I think the rest of my questions are for the applicant.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Vincent. Anyone else have questions? Okay, I do have a couple. Derek, regarding the parking, where in the code do we allow parking spaces to project into the drive path?
So it's not specifically spelled out. I think in the code, Jen, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it essentially refers to a parking, I don't want to say parking plan, but I'm going blank on the word, but go ahead, Jen.
You're on mute, Jennifer.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
I have the 2 places thing going on. In our parking and off-street parking and loading standards, it gives some wiggle room for a lot of the standards. You can't reduce the number of parking spaces, but you can flex some of the standards within the parking and loading section, and that's in, I believe, it's in the applicability standards, 1928-020, waivers to specific requirements. And so recently, we've had our urban design and architecture studio division help us come up with a way that we can help applicants narrow the drive aisle where necessary, because a lot of times we run into these situations where we're having issues trying to fit everything in. And it was Rick Abramson, what his analysis is that if the space is a little bit wider, you can pull out of it safely and have room to back out into a narrower width. And there are limits to that, but essentially, if there's a little bit of give and take with a wider space and a narrower drive aisle, that it can be completely workable.
I get that, and I get that how that's been applied here, and I think Derek did a good job of explaining that. That explains how you can have a shorter parking space. My question relates to the fact that those parking spaces actually extend into the driveway.
Right. What I was trying to explain is
couple
that the
of feet.
driveway can be more narrow with the spaces being wider. So that can be, so if you think of it as the spaces encroaching into the drive aisle, or as the drive aisle being more narrow, either way, it's the same concept, that the drive aisle is going from 26 to 24 feet.
Okay. Perhaps we can have our city architect speak to us about that so we better understand it. Is Mr. Abramson available?
He's on, there he is.
Yes, if he can figure out the mute button. Good evening, commissioners. Rick Abramson, city architect. Yeah, I think as Jennifer was talking about, we've been working with applicants to provide greater flexibility and maintain safety. There are sort of two concepts operative here. There's the backup space, which treats the mobility of the car getting in and out of the space. And then there's the drive aisle, which has to do with ingress and egress. And so we really don't have standards that are on point when it comes to drive aisle consistency and projections into the drive aisle. And so it really, to me, falls more on a best practices. And at what point would it be less than optimum to have bumpers and cars that are not in alignment sticking out into a drive aisle that perceptually would cause an issue? But the minimum here is 24 feet, which is more than adequate for mobility purposes and backup purposes. But it's not, honestly, from a best practices standpoint, we wouldn't recommend, sticking out and projecting too much into that. But yeah, so from a safety standpoint, I think we're fine.
Sorry, I'm muted now. Since we're discussing it, given, I know you've, the applicant has reworked the parking substantially. Are there additional opportunities to perhaps improve it from what we're looking at? I happen to see a couple. I'd like to know your input.
So opportunities to improve the configuration?
Yeah, the parking, the layout, the functionality.
Well, I think given where everything is located currently, the elevator, the trash room, I'd be interested in other ideas. I think it's pretty tight. I don't know that there's too many adjustments that could be made there. I think if there was some slight shifting of the trash room location and the elevator slid a little bit, I think there may be some opportunities. But as proposed and what's there, I'm not really seeing anything else that could enhance it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Derek, let's move on to permeability and sheet 040. Has staff validated these calculations?
Sorry, let me get to that. Plan, you said you're looking at sheet, what was that again?
A040.
040. And I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Has staff validated these calculations?
As far as actually calculating everything, like adding it all together.
Yes.
I don't know if that's changed since the last revision, but the original one, everything worked out as far as permeability.
Including the driveway being considered permeable space?
Yeah, if there's permeable pavers, then it would be considered a permeable surface. So it could be anything from ground cover to permeable pavers, gravel, DG, anything like that. So yeah, in that space, if there are permeable pavers, then it would be considered a permeable area, and that were included in that calculation.
And so at the northern end of the building, where all of that is on top of the mechanical rooms, that's considered permeable?
Yeah, so as long as there is, let me get the cross section up. Where are we? So as far as having permeability, we allow, or we would consider something permeable in a couple of instances. If you have a minimum depth of 3 feet, whether it's from grade all the way down to the subterranean garage, or if you have a minimum 3 foot depth planter. So and if it's one of those cases, then yes, it would be considered a permeable space.
Okay, I'm not sure the plans indicate that, but we'll move on. The structures in the setbacks. Can you advise me as to how these comply with the code?
Sure. Which ones are you referring to specifically?
A202.
Okay.
If you look at the upper right corner, the structural beams that support all of those balconies are all within the setbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do allow for projections in required setbacks. Projections can vary from different things, from stairs to architectural projections, like or even balconies. And this would be considered a projection of a balcony. Specifically, and you could actually see in the middle of that same floor plan, you'll see the required six foot setback, and then an architectural projection line, which is a 2 foot projection into that setback. So essentially, you're going to have a 4 foot setback from the edge of the balcony.
So my reading of the code shows that it allows for projections into the setback. It doesn't allow for structures in the setback. And we're talking about steel beams in the setback.
Well, the way we look at it is that's part of the actual balcony. So that's, although yes, it is a structure, it is supporting the balcony, therefore, it can project.
Okay. All right, well then with that, I'm gonna leave the rest of my discussion and questions for the end. And if there's no further questions, we will move on to the applicant's presentation. They have 10 minutes to make their presentation, after which we will have questions for the applicant, followed by public comment. And from there, we will move into deliberations. So with that, I will turn the floor over to David Stopwatch and the applicant.
Hi, my name is John Mabasser, I'm the architect for the project. I have Rachel Cerruti here, and also Nikki Carlson is gonna probably chime in later on. I want to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to present this project. Once again, as Derek mentioned earlier, and we thank him for his presentation, which was very thorough. We had presented this before, and so the only two hiccups in it was the parking and the average unit sizes. So we have resolved the average unit sizes as well as the parking. Maybe what I'll do, I'll expand a little bit on how the height is measured, since we have the drawings in our set, and also just show the variations of the parking that we tried with Rick Abramson to achieve the best solution for what we had. So what I'll do is that we'll go ahead and look at slide number, let's see, 8 and 11, which go on, there we go. So this is how the height is measured. Basically, you take the average of the upper corner of the lots and the lower corner of the lot and draw a line, and then you establish the average height of the building, and then from there on you develop the height envelope, which is 35 feet, and then you go to a slope of 1 to 2 to get to the upper level, and then your building has to be within this limit. And then this next slide shows the 6-foot setback that our building is within that envelope. So that is one thing. And then the other question was, see, just flip through it. I'm just, yeah, so these are the original parking as shown before. And then these are different variations of the same parking that we tried out to get the best result that we thought was agreeable. And I just wanted to mention that the 24 parking backup space is allowed in LA City as well as City of Santa Monica. So you're within the same limits, if that is any consolation. And also here shows the average unit sizes and how we did it. And there we just go through the to see what the difference are between the previous and the new design. And basically the difference is in the access to the roof, in the stairs sticking up on the roof, and also some of the balcony railings, which provided for fixed window washing of the fixed windows and so on. Otherwise, we tried to keep the exterior facade exactly as we presented it before. So all the modification to average the unit size, we were able to do it within the existing building envelope. And besides that, I don't know what else to talk about. I just wanted to basically talk about the balconies at the corner, which we thought was very desirable because it created a buffer between the public and the privacy of the living room. So it created a buffer, and that's where we got there. And of course, I just wanted to talk about the open parking, open landscape areas, which are critical. You know, we are about twice as much as is required. So I don't know if you're damned to give you more landscape area or less, but we opted to do for the most we could provide for certain units that it was possible to do so. And as far as permeable planters and permeable surfaces, yes, we have basically the reason for permeability is for the rainwater to be filtered, and by providing a permeable paver, the water is perforated through that and is filtered. And on the over the parking, the same. We have dirt under the pavers or under the planting, so that would filter the water, and then we discharge that water. So that's about as much as I thought you asked for. So I'll leave it open to your discussion. And the last is how the building fits within the envelope. And this section shows exactly what's going on, where the building is 3 floors on the lower side with the mezzanine above, and on the Shoreham side, it is 3 floors above a basement, which is defined by code to be a basement. So I thank the opportunity to present to you, and I'll be here to answer any questions that might come up.
Thank you. Are there questions for the architect? Commissioner Vinson?
Yeah, I noticed on your square footage for the open space for unit 101, I noticed in your presentation, you have 120 square feet, which is the minimum. But in the drawings that we were provided, it shows 119 square feet.
Yeah, so that's basically moving the wall, 1 inch or 2 to make the difference. So we'll do that in the working drawing as we present it to the city, and it's going to show that. So basically, it's the computer, the way it averages the area that it calculates, and it automatically came to that. And that's how it's shown.
Okay, and then can you one more time bring up the drawing for how you calculate the envelope? So I see that you go to a 2-1 slope. How do you know how far back? How do you do the calculation of how far back to go to that 2-1 slope?
So when you hit the upper surface, so you have the 35 feet on Shoreham coming up on the right-hand side of the drawing, and then you take that plane and continue it to a point where the 2-1 hits it. So it creates an envelope.
But are you not going horizontal back and then dropping to a 2-1 slope?
No, because you could have that 2-1 slope at those 2 different elevations. That gives you, the code doesn't require you to step back. It tells you to connect the 2 planes, the horizontal and the vertical plane, at the slope of 2-1. So you develop an envelope which is exactly like that. That's how the code is written.
Okay, I guess I'm a little confused here because you showed 15 feet 4 is the drop, correct, from the front to the back?
That's
in another
right.
slide.
Right.
So how does the envelope get created if you're going horizontal back from north to south? You do not have to drop 15'4" as you come back.
No, you don't have to do that. Maybe Jennifer can expand on that, but
Yeah.
So is the question where you find this intersection point? Am I following? you
Yeah,
correctly?
how do you calculate the point of where you have to drop that 45 degrees, the two
Where
one?
this starts to go?
Yeah,
So you,
Jennifer,
you
you've got
measure,
your audio is going. And no, now we can't hear you at all.
okay, well,
We're
I only
getting
have
a-
one login.
No, see, we've got an echo going on here.
Maybe it's
if
me.
John Mabasser can mute. Oh, maybe it was Commissioner Vincent. Okay.
There's no echo now. We can hear you.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
great. So if I can share my screen, I think I can pull up where this is described in the code, and it might be a little bit easier to see. So if John, you could stop. Thank you. Let me just try this. All right. And so do you see this where it's the code language here? Yes?
Yes, I can see it.
I can't. Okay, I can't see people. Thank you. Okay, so we take from the lower side, you measure the maximum height, which in this case I think is 35 feet, up to a point. So that's that line. From the higher side, you do the same thing to 35 feet. Then from the lower side, you're going to do an angle here, 2 to 1, from this line extending up into space forever. But then where this line horizontal comes and connects to it, that's where that intersection point happens. Does that make more sense?
That makes total sense. I got it now. And I just wanted to clarify that too for the public.
Great. I don't know if you wanted to continue with questions for the applicant.
Yeah.
You're still on mute.
Sorry. So my next question for the applicant is in with the parking on A200, space 12, are you able to, when you're designing this, replicate how a car would get out of space 12? I mean, anytime I've had to park up against a wall, you can't actually turn your wheel towards the wall in any direction, go back into the wall. So I just wonder if your only option is go straight back, and then you would just have to do like a 5-point turn.
No, it's not really much difference than having a car next to you, but the code provides that when you're next to a wall, you increase the width of your parking stall, and that's how they overcome that. So I'm sure in a lot of older designs in older places, they don't do it that way, but the code widens like if the required is 8'6", you go to 9 foot when you're next to a wall. So that's how you resolve the issue.
Okay, yeah, because it's not necessarily the wall, I agree with you, it's the same as parking next to a car. I'm more talking about, usually if you park next to a car, you have space to turn, let's say north in this back up north. Usually here you have a continued wall, so you can't back up north.
That's why they give you that
The extra 6 inches.
Because they figure that that's as much as you encroach. If there was a car parked next to you, you can encroach that much into that parking space. And that's why they give you the 6 inches when you're next to the wall and so on.
Okay, it still seems really tight. Okay, and then my next question was, I noticed in unit 204, which is by far the smallest unit, it's less than half of your average square footage per unit. Is there any way to increase the square footage of this unit? And I also noticed that, you know, there's most of every unit has closet space in their, I realize this is a studio, but in their bedroom, where this one, you only have the one closet that's in the living room. I was just wondering if there's any way you could design it to increase the square footage.
I've been involved in designing a lot of units in San Francisco, and really we feel that you don't need that big of a space for a studio unit. And also the thing is that it could be sold at a much lower price than the other places, and also much lower rental if it was to be rented.
Okay. And then I think my last question was on A203. It seems that there's a note for 306, but there's no 306. I believe that's just a typo, but I just thought I would point it out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's just a typo. Exactly.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vincent. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I did have a couple. One, is this wood frame construction?
Yes. And I'm sure it has steel some places, but basically it's a wood frame construction.
Okay, so this is turning to your green points calculation, which is part of your waiver request. Then there is no exposed concrete, and you have 3 points for 60% exposed concrete.
That is the concrete on the podium deck at the first floor.
On frame?
No, because the first two levels, the podium deck above the parking is all concrete to support the upper floors of the units. And also there is a lightweight concrete that is required for the sound rating of these units. So that counts towards that as well. And, the green points will be rechecked with the plan checker. So there shouldn't be any problem there. And there's also basement walls that count into that.
As exposed finished floor?
Yes, we could have it that way.
Well, no, the actual item is use exposed concrete as finished floor. So that's not speaking to subfloor, and that's not speaking to walls.
So yeah, we'll make sure that it complies for the pumps.
Okay. Related to that, you have an additional 5 points here for providing narrow floor plates. There's no cross ventilation in any of these units. So where are you getting the narrow floor plates?
Well, we have window openings above the doors, and that would create the cross ventilation. And also, cross ventilation, it doesn't need to be necessarily at opposite walls. The cross ventilation can happen at a 90 degree. The wind doesn't know which way to turn, whether it's 90 degrees or 180 degrees.
And I do appreciate the concept of ventilation. I kind of get it. But the actual code speaks to providing narrow floor plates, maximum of 50 feet in depth.
That's right. The width is less than 50 feet. It's only one room, basically, and a corridor and bathrooms behind it.
Okay, yeah. All right, and finally, your canopy tree in a planter on the east side is in no way planted in the ground, and it is not on the west or the south face of the building as specified in the green code.
Which planter are you talking about?
Plant a deciduous canopy tree, minimum of 36-inch box, planted in the ground on exposed west and or south elevations, 1 point per tree. You have awarded a point for the one strawberry tree that is planted in a planter on the east side of the building.
Well, we can also plant one in the area where the stair wraps up and goes on the podium deck at the parking level. If you look at that level, there is a planter opposite the driveway as you drive in, and we could have a tree there if the other tree doesn't meet the requirement.
So the point is the planter.
There it is. It's on the landscape drawing. Maybe we could show that.
It's on L10.
Yes.
The point is that a canopy tree needs to be planted in the ground.
It is on the ground.
It
There's
says it's
nothing-
in a planter.
No,
Says right-
they're planter walls, but there is no concrete below it. So it's a raised planter of 3.5, 4 feet, and the tree is planted in it, but there is no basin. There is no concrete floor. The planter has an open bottom, so it's into the dirt.
But it's above the garage.
No, the
It's
garage
not.
starts beyond to the right of the driveway, not there. There is no garage underneath this surface. It's a continuation surface of the driveway coming into the garage.
Okay, then the landscape plan is what was confusing because it was saying that was in a raised planter. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Last question is, can you explain the extraordinary large mechanical rooms on A201, I believe? Yes, A201, you've got one mechanical storage for 1,410 square feet, and then another one for 359 square feet. So that's pushing 2,000 square feet of mechanical.
Well, it's basically a basement floor, and mostly it will be used for storage for the tenants. So, and also we have electrical and possibly electrical, not a backup generator or things like that. So we are anticipating all of that in there.
A really big backup generator. Okay. With that, I will ask if there are any disclosures to be made this evening. A lot of head shaking no. If there's no disclosures to be made, let's move on to public comment. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Please give us your name and your city of residence. And David will be the concert master for this part of this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I do have received several public comments for this item. if there's anybody on the phone that has not contacted me previously, go ahead and hit *9 for me at this time. This will let me know that you do want to speak, and we'll give you an opportunity to do so. Our first public speaker will be Whitney. Whitney, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Yeah, go ahead, Whitney. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Whitney Springer. I live at 8770 Shoreham Drive, right next to where this proposed building is going to be. I've lived here since 1982. There's a lot of misinformation going around about this house, this original conversion in 1993. This was a residential building. My very good friend, David Hahn, owned this building. This was an illegal conversion. Nobody had public comment on it. Nobody knew about it. And this building has sat vacant for over 25 years. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is there was no public comment on this whole new building back in 2020. Jennifer Alkire was supposed to be managing this. The whole thing got canceled. I came down to the city of West Hollywood. Last minute change. Nobody knew about it. Then you had Douglas Vu handling this thing. Douglas Vu disappeared. We don't know what's happening with him. Second of all, this thing should have been a 4-story building. This is ridiculous. That building was a 2-story building, just like 8770. I don't know how it got some kind of R4 conversion ability. No one ever talked about it. How did it even go commercial? There was never even a commercial building. There's never been an office in there. It was a rental unit since the beginning of time. The original owner, 8770, Mary Honore, who's a good family friend. That's why I've been living here since 1982. You know, she'll tell you the whole history of that building because her father built this one right here. I think that this whole logic of this being a 3-story building, with all due respect to your esteemed architect and your envelope concept and, 35 feet, matching walls, it's a 4th floor. They call it apartment 401, right? You have an apartment on the 4th floor. It's a 4th floor. Let's not, talk about some kind of fancy math calculation. You got a 4th floor. You got a penthouse up there. You have nowhere near enough parking for this neighborhood. I'm telling you, I voted for permit parking here. We worked really hard. I've lived here before it was even the city of West Hollywood. I've been living here. We worked hard to get permit parking because there's never enough parking. Your parking is way too small. All this garbage about wiggle room, putting the cars in the driveway to get out. You guys, you're not even talking about the cars of, 2020. People have giant cars, SUVs. And I can't remember who was talking about it, but you were asking great questions. Hey, it's against the wall, 5-point turn. Let's be honest about it. They're trying to squeeze way too many apartments into way too small of a lot. There's no way the neighborhood's going to handle the parking. The presentation from the city planner who couldn't even answer the questions, he's kind of, laughing about it. Let's get serious. I've lived here. What are you going to do about the driveway, the weight of that building? If you look at the driveway at 8770, it's already cracking. The whole retaining wall is cracking, right? When you put all that weight on there, what kind of retaining wall are you going to do to protect our building? And on top of that, what kind of mitigation? What kind of mitigation are you guys talking about? How are you going to protect our building for the next 2 years with all the garbage and dust and everything else that's going to happen? Honestly, with all due respect, we're happy that finally something is going to happen on this corner lot, but I really would urge the city council, and I want to talk to each one of you guys individually, right? Whitney Springer, I'm a producer on the TV show America's Funniest Videos. I've been living here since 1982. We're happy that something's going to happen, but this thing is way out of control. I think you got not enough parking, squeezing everything you can, and the whole concept of best practices versus safety. Let's go with 100% best practices, 100% safety, and let's make it a nice complement to the neighborhood, not some behemoth that's going to completely destroy the parking in the neighborhood. What do you guys think? How do we talk to you? Who do I talk to now? Who's the person who's going to manage this?
Okay, 3 minutes is up. Thank you, Whitney. Our next speaker
so no one
is
responds to me, David?
To be clear, this is a time for public comment, but there is no opportunity for discussion, as it were. Should someone bring up an item from public comment that requires questions or discussion, that will happen at the end of public comment when the commissioners will deliberate.
Thank you, Chair. Our next speaker will be Thomas Mondragon. Thomas, you have 3 minutes to speak. State your name and city of residence.
Yeah, hi. My name is Thomas Mondragon, and thank you for this opportunity. I've lived in the neighborhood for 19 years, and it can be this area can be a quiet, tucked away area that's been a pleasure to live in. However, one of the big challenges has always been parking. And when I listened to the discussion today about the parking garage and how you're going to have to wiggle in and out of it, people are going to opt to not park in the garage and park on the street. So in this area, there are 3 residential streets affected by this proposed 11-unit building: Horn Avenue, Shoreham Drive, and Sherburne Drive. All 3 streets allow parking only on one side of the street. With 0 additional units, regularly there are problems finding enough parking for residents, guests, service vehicles, delivery trucks, etc. On most days, you'll find cars and delivery trucks parked illegally on the no parking side of the street because there simply isn't enough parking to support all the necessary traffic as it now stands. Today I walked out there and counted the number of parking spots that the 3 streets or the 2 streets can support, Sherburne and Shoreham Drive. And that came out to about 22 spots. That's if everybody, kind of consciously parks because they're aware of how limited the parking is. So today when I was out there, I saw 2 open parking spots and 5 cars parked illegally on the no parking side of the street. Right, and so that's with 0 additional units. And when some of these vehicles are delivery trucks or moving vans parked on the wrong side of the street, it makes it additionally, really hard to pass, get in and out of residential driveways, and even to park. So on a regular basis, my partner and I, with only one garage spot where we live, we have to think about switching cars onto the street just to make sure there's a spot when we get home at night. That's with 0 additional units. And you're wanting to put 11 units onto these streets where there's not enough parking. Also on Sherburne, there's a law office building a huge addition behind it. And I don't know how that's going to impact parking because I don't see parking allotted for that as well. So, you're affecting the quality of life of, I don't know how many residents live on Horn, Sherburne, and Shoreham Drive, but you're affecting the quality of life for people and for the additional residents who would be coming into the neighborhood when there's clearly not enough room for everybody to live and feel comfortable and enjoy the possibility of what this area offers. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Our next caller will be Richard Gitterman. Richard, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence.
Yes, my name is Richard Gitterman. I've also lived here since the 80s, West Hollywood, 8729 Shoreham. I do want to say I find it very concerning about the public comment. I think the first speaker addressed that. The last meeting you guys had, there were 3 of us in queue. You couldn't hear it. Nobody seemed to get the postcard last time. I'd be very curious. I said to Derek that one of the people speaking there, I thought they got a postcard, but it turned out it was for a billboard. So it's like no one seems to even know what's going on. Also, you guys gave us an opportunity to email our concerns, both on an automated system, I'll call it an electronic system, and also I sent to Derek and David an email. I see on your list of additional correspondence, you have 2 of my neighbors, one on the July 13th, one on the 15th. I did mine the 14th. I don't even see a record of that in my opposition. Getting to the project, the density is the biggest concern for us all here. It has been an empty unit. The first speaker also might have brought a good point. You guys were debating about whether it's commercial or residential. The big house, which has been empty, I always thought was residential. There is a building below part of the property that might be commercial, so I am concerned since you have that labeled as the whole property being commercial, if that is the fact. We totally are, you're going to hear this from everybody, we are in a parking crisis. And at night, if I ever come home at night for not having a space, there's no spaces on the 3 streets. And when you guys were discussing about how tight that parking is, internally, I agree with, I think it was Thomas that just said, people today have Range Rovers, they have SUVs. who the heck is going to park in something where it's very tight? They might hit a wall in there. There is not enough parking here. And so we've been dealing with an empty unit for I think, I've lived there since the 80s, for at least 10, 15 years, and we already have the parking problem. I do have two questions, so when you get back to us, please answer these. When I looked through the exhibits, I thought it said that the owner will not, the people living there will not be getting residential permits. If you can clarify that. If that is the case, my question is, will they not be getting guest permits? Because if somebody has a guest permit, 2 per unit, as we all know, that you can park 24/7. So if you guys stipulated, because you were sensitive and you knew our parking concerns, that they're not, if I read that correctly, they're not going to get residential permits, please do answer if that is true, and if you are allowing them to get guest permits, because we're in the same darn boat again. And also, if you could please answer during the construction, it says they're going to park off, they're not going to park here. I've never seen that for any construction, people not parking here. So please also answer where you have put for their trucks, and there's some days will be cement, and in these narrow streets, that's a temporary thing that could go on for a year or two, but that is extremely concerning. So concerning. Please let us know where you have lots and how these big trucks are going to come here, where they're going to not park off street, if I read that correctly. So just reiterating, the density is what's scaring all of us here. An empty unit now, we're already in a parking crisis.
30 seconds remaining.
And now you're trying to put 11 units, which sounds like very tight parking in there. So we urge you not to approve this project. If it was reduced, we'd understand. And if you got parking worked out, we'd understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Our next caller will be Deborah Callahan. Deborah, you have 3 minutes to speak. Go ahead and give us your name and city of residence. And you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Deborah Callahan, and I am going to pass on my 3 minutes. I think that everybody has, I would concur with the opinions that have gone ahead of me, and I will, I suspect that there'll be a few others after me as well. So I'll give up my 3 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Our next caller will be Barry Scott. Barry, you'll have 3 minutes. State your name and city of residence, please.
Hello, Barry Scott on the call. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Yes. All right. Thank you for allowing me to address the commission. Most of the comments actually do coincide with the deep concerns that the neighbors have. I myself am a neighbor. I live for 40 years in the Sunset Plaza Terrace building across the street. I actually park on the Shoreham side. We have garages on that side, and that was based on the original assignment of parking. So I'm intimately aware of that particular pocket of the neighborhood, which is only serviced by 2 streets, Sherborne from Sunset Boulevard and Horn from Sunset Boulevard, with the cross street being Shoreham. So we are, in a sense, more or less a landlocked neighborhood where the density and the amount of capacity is very sensitive as to what we can support. The principal concerns have been mentioned, which is the scale of the building at 18,638 square feet and the 11 unit density. Which we feel the neighborhood will not easily support 11 new households. The project, we have been following it for several years, attempting to do our best to give our input, as the other speakers have mentioned. And I suspect the overall problem for the applicant is that he's trying to put too much onto the land. This is just simply too much building, and it has a dramatic impact, being that that particular corner is a very prominent corner for our neighborhood. Specifically, I'd like to take the commission to task on the portion of the building that they are defining as mezzanine, which does constitute a habitable 4th story, and also on the balcony projections that are coming out with their support columns to nearly the lot line. not taking into consideration the formal setbacks for the property. Now, I realize the commission has attempted to address this through its careful examination of the code
30
and
seconds remaining.
the entitlements portion. However, there is such a thing as the spirit of the law, and I really feel that in granting the applicant these extra advantages, making use of the code, to disadvantage the neighborhood is very unfair-minded, and that really concerns us deeply. Additionally, finally, the historical nature of the building, which many neighbors are challenging that position. I'd like to request the commission send me all documentation connected with that portion of the application so that we can have it properly reviewed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Barry. Our next caller is calling. Your last 4 digits of your phone number is 5690. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence. Okay, while they're unmuting, we'll go ahead and call our next caller. Our next caller will be Lynn Russell. Lynn, go ahead. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Oh, good evening, Chair Hoopen Gardner and fellow commissioners. I'm going to take a little lighter side to the subject here and address the aesthetics. I first saw this project when it came to design review a few years ago and felt that it had great possibilities with a few revisions to really set a new pace for any prospective building that would be going on in that particular area. So I actually had a conversation with the architect, Mr. Mabasser, a few days ago, and he was very gracious listening to my comments, which were outlined in a small memo that is in the staff report packet. The 4 areas, and this was predicated on the references in the staff report that it almost had a turn-of-the-century Paris quality to it, but with a contemporary interpretation. This is true, but I think this can be actually enhanced and add sophistication and elegance to it with a few modifications. Number 1, on the exterior surface, color and texture. If you look at this underneath the present variegated surface and colors, there is almost a quality of a pure modern feeling, also turn-of-the-century Paris. But configuring these sections in more of a tonal manner, perhaps a shade of gray in this wood tile siding, would actually add more continuity to the project. And then there's a consideration of light and shadow, which would also produce some nice effects on the building in the lighter colors. Secondly, the windows, the black window surrounds add a nice definition, could be used consistently around on the other side rather than what has been used if there's a change from the brown tile. Thirdly, the deck system, I felt that could be finer and a more articulated wrought iron appearance, and it would eliminate the heaviness, particularly as that plays against the choice of the window surround. And lastly, the front entrance. It's just my feeling that this could be much more enhanced on Sherborne, and instead of this the brown slatting and so forth that is rising above the entrance, could be actually a wrought iron laid over glass, which would give a very elegant impression as an entrance. Again, this is found on many fine buildings in that era of Paris and Europe. So these are definitely just aesthetic changes that probably wouldn't drive this project off of its current schedule, nor be adding to its budget.
30 seconds.
But I do think it's an opportunity here to set a higher bar for the entire neighborhood, and I hope you'll consider these observations and suggestions in your deliberations. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn. I have only one caller left. And before I call her, if there is anybody else on the call that I have missed or you would like to speak, just hit *9 for me, please. And that will let me know and we can give you your opportunity to speak. Our next and last caller will be Sue Buckner. Sue, go ahead. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, everybody. This is Sue Buckner. I live at 8722 Shoreham Drive. I've lived here for almost 24 years, and I am very much opposed to this. Number one, we did not, in my building, get notice of this hearing. As far as I know, there were no notices ever about any of these meetings to the people that live in my building. We have 15 units here. I've checked with my neighbors, and no one has received any written notice, no postcards, no nothing. So I also want to know whether the developer has applied for a condo tract map. It seems like looking at the item paragraph 11.0 and 11.1 in the resolution, it refers to the CC&Rs, and I'm questioning whether or not this is actually going to be a rental property. I've lived here a long time. The place has never been occupied by anybody. It hasn't been commercially occupied. Nobody's lived there. The whole 23 years that I've lived here, there's been no one. The only people that have occupied it are transients, and the sheriffs have had to come here to evict them and get them out of there. I'm questioning also whether how this ever got an exemplary design. It would seem that they waited 3 years to move forward on this building, the developers, and I don't know if it would qualify under our current design standards as an exemplary design, and that makes a big difference in terms of a lot of the benefits that the developer is getting. I don't see whether our current urban designer, professional architect, Rick Abramson, has weighed in here. I don't see any comments from him, and I wonder why not. And in my mind, this building does not meet our exemplary design standards. Meanwhile, there's the modifications that have been given or at least suggested by this department. I wonder how that is possible. I don't see where any findings by the Planning Commission regarding the modification anywhere in the staff report, although it may be somewhere that I just may have overlooked it, but I don't see whether there's been findings that would allow for a modification.
30 seconds.
I have a lot more to say, but that's, I'm just thinking that this is not compatible with our neighborhood. I agree with my neighbors who have spoken. This is definitely too big, too large. They should reduce the number of units. That would help with the parking situation. And, there's 11 units, but there's 2 and 3 bedrooms there. That means 2 and 3 people living in those units with cars. It's just impossible in this neighborhood. So I would also ask that you scrutinize the landscape plans. I'm leaving that up to Lynn, who's very capable. The chair of planning commissioner, she will, I'm sure, follow up on the landscape issues. I really think this project needs to go back and be looked at again. It's just not compatible with this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Our next speaker will be S.J. Denny. S.J., please, you have 3 minutes to speak. Your name and city of residence, please.
Hi, my name is F.J. Denny. My address is 8722 Shoreham Drive. I've been a resident here for almost 5 years. My comments are, number one, I'd like to thank the board for their time. But I'd like to make it known that I have not received any mail notices regarding this project. It was brought to me by the attention of the other residents of my building. My comment is that given the current climate emergency that we're experiencing, that we need to seriously consider the temperature changes that the removal of the mature foliage on the lot will cause, particularly the increase in the heat temperatures at the street and on the sidewalk. This is going to change the light and the shade and the walkability of the neighborhood, and it's going to increase the density of the traffic and create parking problems where the situation is already untenable. My major concern is to review the landscaping plan to see what we can do to mediate any type of heat increases that this project would cause. And secondly, the overall impact seems detrimental to us. I agree completely with the previous callers. Before we commit to allowing this construction, I think we need to stop and take a breath to make sure that every gate has been looked at to make sure that we're not committing to something that will be a crisis for the city as a whole down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, FJ. And our last caller, we're going to try, your phone number is ending in 5690. If you'd like to take an opportunity, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence. 5690, your last 4 digits of your number. And Chair, it doesn't look like they are responding. So that looks like that's all of our public speakers for this item.
Thank you, David. And thank you to everyone who has commented this evening. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. The applicant will have time to reply, but I do want to just speak to some housekeeping items to help the public understand a couple of things. Number one, this property is zoned to be developed up to 35 feet. That is the zoning in the general plan that was voted on by the city in 2011, something like that. Correct me, Jennifer. But at that time, any zoning changes that were done, and that is what was established for this property. So in that respect, this commission has no leeway in terms of how things are decided in terms of the actual height, and that same thing applies to the number of units. As to parking permits, Derek, you can probably tell me exactly the item in the resolution, but there are no parking permits allowed for any residents in any new construction. They are entitled to 50 one-day passes per year, per unit. So the concept of getting a permanent parking pass is not permitted in the resolutions as presented. As for the construction worker parking on the city streets, I will reemphasize this for all listeners because it's an ongoing problem in our city. I myself have recently reported 2 projects where construction workers were parking on the street. It is not permitted per the resolutions. So should this project or any other project be in construction and you witness construction workers parking on the city streets, please call code enforcement and report it. It's the only way the city can enforce the code is if you report it. So know that those things are very much in the existing resolutions as presented. I, for one, and I know my colleagues are very diligent about making sure that those are always there because that's an important thing for everybody's quality of life. As for the commercial designation, it is in the package that the city council voted to allow this conditional use permit for commercial office space. At the time, it looked like it was for Spagos in 1993. So that is when that conversion happened and was allowed. I'm presuming that that becomes vacated with the new project. And legal can clarify that. But and last but not least, I would like legal to speak to the fact that we appear to have a noticing problem. And that we had more than one speaker and what appears to be an entire building that did not receive notice. And that's concerning to me.
Yeah, I think the place to start is maybe staff could explain what notices were sent out and what has been done to notice, and maybe we can try to identify, understand more about the notice and concerns.
I mean, I know that notices did go out because I received one, but that doesn't mean that the radius map and you know, all of the 500 feet were incorporated.
Right, so maybe the commission secretary or Derek could explain the standard noticing practices and what are in the records for how this project was noticed.
Sure. So as far as radius mailing, sorry, Jen, did I cut you off? We are contracted with a professional mailing radius mailing company, and they provide us with the most up to date. Oh, I forgot my video. Sorry. They provide us with the most up to date list of both occupants and property owners. That list is taken from the assessor's office, and it's within a 500-foot radius from the subject property.
Eric, if you would, just for everyone's benefit, given that this has come up, would you pull up that radius map, which is on page 58 of the staff package for those of you reading along at home?
1 second.
Hey, this is Whitney Springer, and I live right next to the building, and I never received a notice. So I'm in 8770, 0 notices for this entire building.
Thank you. Although normally we don't encourage additional public comment.
And sorry, that was exhibit E.
Yeah, it's page 58, excuse me. Exhibit E.
Okay. Yeah, let me just share my screen here. Let's see. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So, as I was saying, the radius mailing is a 500-foot notice. It's taken, from the property line surrounding, and you take a 500-foot line and you connect all that, and so that becomes your radius. And everyone, whether you're an occupant, so in other words, a renter, or if you're a property owner, you should be getting a notice if you fall within that area.
So if my understanding is correct, Whitney lives in the property immediately to the south of this. And there was another speaker, I think, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I just want to jump in. I'm Whitney, and no, I live right next to it.
Oops, you cut off.
I can.
So, you cut off, so I'm
I
sure.
just want, sorry. I just want to clarify. I live at 8770 Shoreham Drive. That's right next to the building. No messages. No one in my building ever got any notice of this. Nothing.
Okay. So that's immediately to the west. Sue Buckner. I don't want to keep calling on people, but I'd like to just kind of get some statistics here as to what's going on. It sounds like a significant number of people, and that's problematic.
It is, although I think staff will report that they have a list of all the mailings that went out, and these buildings are on the list. So if we want to take a moment and take a recess and try and figure out what's going on, but the staff, the city's, I'll let Jennifer speak.
Yeah, I can just comment. I pulled up the list right now. There's 2 lists, one for owners, one for occupants. And those addresses that were mentioned are on the list. So we have a consultant that creates the list for all of these projects, for everything we notice for. And then we have another company that does the actual mailings. Then they certify that the mailings went out to everybody on the list. Once those go to the U.S. Postal Service, it's out of our control at that point. So we control everything that we can by getting the list, checking the radius map, checking the list, and giving it to a company that then certifies that the notices went out. You know, I'm not sure if there is something going on where resident mailing, if it doesn't have an actual name, isn't going to people's post office boxes or something like that. I don't know, but we do have all of those addresses. 8770 is on here with a number of units. So I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure where in the process that breakdown is happening.
So I'm going to leave this to legal counsel. I mean, I don't know what I mean, obviously we have noticing requirements, and to say, yeah, we put something in the mail, that's nice. But if it sounds like a substantial number of people did not receive notice, where does that leave us?
We also have some redundancy in our noticing process where we post the site as well. You know, so there were postings on two sides of this property because it's a corner property, just to make sure that people coming in and out both on Sherborne and Shoreham can see it. It's a 3 foot by 4 foot. It's in color. It's got a rendering of the project so that it's not confusing as to what it's referring to. You know, so we try to build in some of that extra protection so that people who maybe aren't in the 500 feet or who don't get a mailing for some reason can also see that.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Hello. Hey, this is Whitney again. I want to let you know that sign on the corner, Jennifer Alkire will tell you, because she told me that sign, people don't even pay attention to it. They don't update it. We all went down to the meeting in the city of West Hollywood, and then there was no meeting. She said, oh, I'm sorry, nobody updated the sign. Right? I mean, come on, Jennifer, you know exactly what happened. Then you referred me to Douglas Zoo. Nothing happened.
This is not the time for public comment.
Yeah.
I think we need to stop and bring it back to the commission,
okay,
please,
thank you.
and figure out how to move forward. Thank you.
Are you want more talk about the mailing since you're addressing that?
No, we're not.
We're gonna.
We're not taking any further public comment at this time.
About the mailing. Okay.
We're asking our legal counsel to advise us as to what we should do given this apparent noticing issue.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I think it's ultimately up to the commission whether you are comfortable moving forward with a decision tonight. You have, you know, a certified document from the mailing house that they put all these notices in the mail. They do certify it. And then you have multiple residents who have shown up tonight saying that they did not receive anything in the mail. So if the commission would be more comfortable waiting a few weeks and continuing the hearing to the next public meeting, perhaps an additional notice can be sent out. So really, it's up to the commission on your comfort level. There are people here. People did have notice of it. They were here speaking. You do have a certified record from the mailing house. But at the same time, you don't know who didn't receive the mailing and who might also want to be here to participate.
And that is what gives me a great deal of discomfort. And having said that, we've, you know, proceeded with the hearing. We did not have this information at the beginning of the hearing. In the past, when this has come up, we've often had that notice of lack of notice up front, and we've immediately not had the hearing and continued it. But now we've gone down the road of, you know, sort of 3/4 of the hearing. But at the same time, if someone has been excluded from this process because they did not receive notice, you know, transparency is a really big thing for me, and I know my colleagues. And I feel very uncomfortable when an entire building didn't get their mailings. And I do know that we've all had issues with postal deliveries thanks to the COVID, et cetera. But I'd like to hear from my colleagues as to what you feel would be the appropriate next step. Vice Chair Jones, do you have thoughts?
I mean, the information that we have is, you know, the kind of the most that we have to go on. I have to imagine that I trust that if staff sent these out and we have a mailing list that they were sent out, it doesn't mean that the people in the buildings adjacent received them. I also know in the past we have had problems with people not knowing what they look like. It's one of the reasons why we ask that the mailings, the look and feel of the mailings be changed so that it's on cardstock and is glossier paper and is very much a notice as opposed to like a, you know, a folded piece of paper. So
But if
I'm
people
open to
didn't receive
discussion
that-
here. I also just want to know, we still haven't given the applicant an opportunity to you know, give their
Respond.
rebuttal.
Correct.
And that would be my recommendation, and then we can move into questions and discussion.
But that would be moving forward with the hearing. And so that's why I'm wondering if we should address this noticing issue right now.
No, I think you can finish the process. Whether you make a decision tonight or decide to continue it, do one more round of noticing before you make a final decision, it's fine. But I don't think you need to stop in the middle of the process. I think you can get to the end of the public participation and then decide.
Okay. Thank you. Well, with that, then I will return this to the applicant. We'll have 5 minutes to respond to the public comment.
This is, so I'll get started just briefly. This is Nikki Carlson with Alston and Bird representing the project. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Happy
I'm
to be
sorry, and your city of residence.
My city of residence is Los Angeles. Staff has really done a terrific job tonight presenting the project and responding to the commissioner's questions. At the Planning Commission hearing last year, the project was very well received and recognized as having a unique and exemplary design. But the commission did ask, obviously, the applicant to address the parking issues and to conform to the 1,200 square foot maximum average unit size, which the applicant did. In fact, as you saw in the presentation from the architect, you know, there were 4 configurations of the parking that were evaluated over a period of time. A lot of energy was spent looking at the parking. And I believe it's the best parking solution that there is. And with respect to street parking, I think Chair Hoopengarner, you had explained it exactly right. I was going to refer to section 10.6 of the conditions, which addresses street parking and does provide some limited guest parking, but hopefully addresses that issue for the neighbors. Concerns obviously have been raised with respect to the size of the project, but this is an R4A zone, a high density multifamily residential zone, right? The project is consistent with all of the development standards, including the height envelope, and it is compatible with the neighborhood. I mean, as noted in the staff report, buildings in the area are 2 to 14 stories high. This project, 11 units and 3 stories, works with this neighborhood. Other comments have been raised regarding safety during construction, but the city's building and safety department is very rigorous in enforcing safety standards. I don't think there should be any worry there. And I think with respect to construction parking, again, the city has every ability to enforce that. We think this is a quality project and we urge the commissioners to approve it. Oh, by the way, just on the notice issue, I will just say this, is that, look, all the city can do is comply with its standards and to make sure that it does the noticing properly, which, as I understand, they have done. There are issues with respect to whether people recognize the notice or not. We all throw sorts of things in the garbage, but the test really is, did the city do what it was supposed to do with respect to noticing? And that's my final thought. Again, we urge you to approve the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this time, are there any further questions of the applicant? Okay, with that, I will close the public comment and move into deliberations. And the first item, I guess, of deliberation is going to have to be this noticing question. and how we all feel about moving forward with a final decision tonight, with clearly a noticing issue. Myself, there's sort of two sides to this. We tick the boxes. We, as the city, did the job of doing the mailing per the mailing house. But I will note, if I recall correctly, we did have a hiccup with this mailing house about a year ago, wasn't it? We had a situation where the noticing had a problem. And so, and I believe that item was continued. So for consistency's sake, should we do the same thing? Thoughts?
Can we get clarification from legal on what the test is? Is it as Ms. Carlson said, and that the test is that, the city did its due diligence in sending out the notices, or is there another, benchmark or threshold that we should be paying attention to here as we're making our consideration or deliberation?
Well, I think there's sort of a couple different things you have to look at. What the city is obligated to do is put the notices in the mail. I think Jennifer's correct that we can't control the U.S. Postal Service and when they get there, if people notice them, there's a bunch of factors outside your control. So, but from the commission's perspective, you want to have comfort that that the people who are interested in this process had an opportunity to show up and voice their concerns or voice their support. That's really the second piece of it. There's the legal minimum, and then having comfort that people knew about the hearing. There were people here tonight. So it's not that no notice was received. But so those are the factors. There's the optics and the transparency of it, as well as the bare minimum of what the code requires.
Any other discussion on this subject?
I'll go for 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely concerned that perhaps some people did not receive notice, and I definitely appreciate and would like everyone to have the opportunity, to comment in a forum like this. So I do have some concern, although it does seem that notice has gone out in some capacity because we do have people on this call, but there are a number of people that are noting the same issue. So that concerns me. I do have a question too. One of the callers, I believe it was Richard, noted that there was an email. I don't think I saw that email, although I caught a few other items of correspondence that came in. I'm wondering if staff could clarify that too, because that makes me feel like maybe I didn't receive everything either.
Just to be clear, and I don't know if it's appropriate to have Richard reply, but I do keep all of my emails if it was sent to me. Is it possible that I may have missed one? Possibly, but I don't think so. I'm more than happy to check to make sure.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
If that was Richard Gitterman, it is on actually page 9 of 12 of the supplemental correspondence from this afternoon, 7:15.
Okay.
So for the public, you can go to the website and for any supplemental packages that the staff adds. So the Planning Commission page should have those additional documents. They were delivered to us earlier today as a package. So if that is the person that had a letter that they didn't feel got to us, that did get to us.
Okay, I see that here now.
Okay, so that issue is covered. So we're back to the mailings. and the noticing. Commissioner Vincent, did you have comments?
I mean, I'm really torn here because, you know, I am extremely concerned if, you know, people weren't noticed and they didn't know this hearing was happening, and, you know, especially neighbors that are right next door. But there is a significant amount of people that have shown up. So somehow they knew, and I know some of them, they've mentioned that their neighbor told them about it, you know, hey, and so it could have been, you know, it could have been word of mouth of people, you know, knocking on their neighbors' doors and saying, hey, did you know this hearing was happening? So that could be why we do have so many people here, that, you know, one person or two people that, you know, are very involved and pay attention and go to the website and see what's happening and what's coming up, maybe saw that it was happening and then started knocking on their neighbors' doors, and then, you know, the word got out, and that's how we have so many people here. So I'm very torn. I'm concerned that, you know, as you are, that people weren't noticed. But then we have gotten through, you know, a majority of the hearing to continue it, you know, and start all over. So I'm at a loss. I'm just torn.
Well, and the fact that people talk to their neighbors is lovely, but that's not part of, you know, the public process in terms of noticing. And, you know, in these days of COVID, you know, there are very real scenarios where, you know, you're ordering your food, you're not even walking, you know, around necessarily, and seeing signs on the wall. I thank staff for posting it on both sides of the street, because I can see scenarios where you go down one side of the street and not the other, and therefore you wouldn't see it. So having a corner lot have, you know, notices on both sides is an excellent thing. But if you work from home and you're doing everything virtually and you haven't gone out, you know, in a week and a half, which I certainly have done over the past year and a half, you wouldn't know. And so.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the point that I was trying to make here was that, you know, if we're arguing that, you know, we did have people who knew and who have shown up, well, they might have shown up just because their neighbor was paying attention and knocked on their door. And my concern is that, you know, if these mailers didn't reach these buildings, then just this handful of people knew only because someone knocked on their door. And that's my concern. Or called them, or, you know, texted, you know, let their neighbor know in one way or another.
So Commissioner Caballero?
Yeah, I mean, we're all concerned, clearly, and we're all worried that people are not getting their notices. But, you know, when I discussed this with Derek earlier today, and the protocols have been followed, you know, and we do have records of these notices going out. And like Commissioner Vincent said, we've had a lot of callers today, actually more than we get for a lot of projects. So yes, we feel uncomfortable, and we all agree on that. However, will delaying this for 2 or 4 or 6 weeks actually change anything? Because as much as I feel for everybody that's called in, I can't see a reason, you know, that this project should be rejected, because it is code compliant. If anybody looks at page 8 of 12 and look down at the, you know, down the chart for the residential multifamily development standards, it meets all the standards. It fits within the envelope. So my next question would be, yes, delaying will allow more people to comment, but I'm not certain the resultant would be any different than what it would be today. So I'll just add that 2 cents to the discussion and see if anybody feels strongly against that or for it.
Well,
I think that's well said, Commissioner Caballero.
Yeah.
I'm aligned, and I'm happy in my comments about the project to, try to, endeavor to help members of the public understand,
Hey, folks, hey, hang on a second here. You guys, this is like a big whitewashing thing. You all comfortable with it. We have to live with it for the rest of our lives. Let's be honest about it. You guys, Jennifer's looking down. She knows.
Sorry, this isn't an opportunity for crosstalk.
This
isn't an opportunity for
sorry, not an
crosstalk.
opportunity for you guys because you guys don't care. We have to live with this thing.
David?
Seriously, what are you guys thinking about here?
David, can you please control the
Chair.
crowd, if you will?
Confirmed.
Thank you. At this point,
I want to finish what I was saying, and again, I'm happy to speak more to this, but I think I want to help members of the public understand the legal criteria by which we are allowed to make a consideration when we are weighing whether or not we're going to approve a project, and they're very much the same and very consistent across projects. I completely understand that people are, frustrated and upset that by the time they get to this hearing that it seems that it's as much as done. That's not the case, but there's a very narrow, especially given some of the, state bills that have come down in the last, especially the last couple of years, that really does narrow the realm in which we can, issue an approval or a denial when it comes to projects like these. So I'm happy to speak more at length on this, but it's not that we're not listening to you at all. I'm very much empathize and I'm sure, the rest of us do as well. I think I can speak for all of us when I say, everyone who's on this commission lives in the city. We're required to, as a matter of policy by the city of West Hollywood. So we're here with you. We get it. But again, there are legal criteria by which we have to abide.
Exactly, Vice Chair. And, we all live with the parking problems. We all live with the concerns about the height and the density, but we are severely constrained in many areas as to what we are allowed to approve and or deny. And, speaking, I think for all of us is that we work very hard, and you may have seen that through our questions, to establish what can and cannot be addressed as a way to make this project as best as it can possibly be. Commissioner Caballero?
Yeah, I just want to address one letter that hasn't come up. No one's addressed it today. There was a letter from someone who owns a building nearby. It was a developer or a real estate company that said that the building of this building might compromise the structural integrity of their building because the drawings were so scant or so thin. And I just want the public to understand that what we're looking at is a drawing set that goes to planning. This is not the drawing set that goes to building and safety, that which will have civil, will have shoring diagrams, will have full-fledged landscape, have full-fledged structural. So I understand the concern, but I also believe that building and safety will make certain that there is no integrity loss in the neighborhood around it by the building of this building.
And yes, exactly. Thank you. And so what we're looking at is what is called schematic designs, and the development of the designs will go through two more phases, ending in what they call CDs or construction documents. And those construction documents will have all the gory details. And this is a hilly city. We're used to having to deal with projects on hills. And let's also not forget our water table issues. We have a very high water table that has significant impacts upon developments. And so when building and safety gets to these plans, they will be addressing all of those issues. And it's certainly a very valid concern. And I live on a very steep hill. I mean, mine's like a 40 degree hill on my street. And so I'm very aware of these issues. but there's only so much we can do in terms of our decision making. That being said, I think we have a consensus around moving forward with this. And having said that, remember that as a public, and David will say this, depending which way we vote, there is a right to appeal the decision of this commission. And not that I'm in any way encouraging it, whatever the decision is, the public has, anybody has the right to appeal any decision. So that being said, again, I'm not sure what more we would hear from additional public that would further inform us, and then certainly inform me in terms of my decision, unless there was some sort of earth-shattering piece of information, but I can't conceive of what that might be. So with that, let's, if we have a consensus on that subject, let's move into deliberation. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Caballero?
I mean, I'm happy to start and just build on what I said before. You know, thinking back to a year ago when we reviewed this project, you know, we obviously had issues with parking, and the parking has more or less been resolved. And I think down deep, we all hoped that by decreasing the size of the units, we might decrease the size of the building. And, you know, when I received the package and I compared page to page, you know, to the previous package, I realized that we received the same envelope, you know, and things were modified inside, which is unfortunate, but completely possible and doable. And, you know, especially in COVID, you could say, yes, we need larger corridors. And, you know, during COVID, we need larger patios. So again, I go back and just build on what I said before. You know, reading through the resolution and the staff report and the drawing set, I really don't see, you know, a way to deny this project. It is compliant. So that's kind of where I'm leaning at right now.
I concur, Commissioner Caballero. And again, I'm happy to speak to, you know, the kind of rules that we have to live by as commissioners, and, you know, the criteria by which we're allowed to judge projects. But as far as I can tell, and again, having been on commission last year when this project initially came before us, it does seem to be in compliance. And I don't see, you know, legal grounds on which we would be able to deny this project.
I have a couple of concerns. One is I am going to respectfully disagree with staff in that there are structures in the setbacks. There are steel beams in the setbacks, and that is a structure as far as I'm concerned, and that is not allowed per our code. And those structures are within 3 feet of the sidewalk. I humbly disagree that that is not allowed by our code. I'm willing to be disabused, but that is a large steel beam. There are 3 large steel beams in the setback in that northeast corner of the building. And it's a large structure. It's visually a large structure. And the fact that you can have balconies project into a setback is one thing. This is visually a large structure. So that piece right there is concerning to me. I feel that there's absolutely no need for those huge mechanical rooms on the north side of the building that project into the setbacks. And if we were to move forward with this, I would request that those mechanical rooms be pulled back, and that substructure be reduced to dramatically increase the actual open space, truly permeable space. I don't feel that that's necessary, and there is so little landscaping, to Ms. Buckner's point, there's virtually no landscaping in this project. This thing is wall to wall, bathtub, garage. It is built to the last inch. And to Commissioner Caballero's point, we sent it back with the intention to reduce that, and it didn't happen. And it didn't happen, and it still doesn't meet code. Now, Jennifer, Derek, you know, if you can point to me where that is legit, I just don't buy it.
I'm sorry, I was trying to take notes. Are you talking about the parking level?
Well, I'm talking about the structure that encroaches into the setbacks. So you have, and that's on page.
On the lower level though, correct?
On page A202.
The plans.
And Derek, maybe you can bring this up so everybody can see.
And are you speaking about the balconies at this point, or are you speaking about the subterranean?
No,
portion?
the balconies, on A202, you've got those steel beams that are 4 feet into the setback on the north side, and 2 feet into the setback on the Sherborne Drive side, bringing that structure right up to the sidewalk. Trying to see where it might be in the render.
Yeah, it's A301, I think is a good depiction of what you're talking about.
Well, A202 actually has the steel beams.
Yeah,
Wow.
I get that, but you can see that they're, because that almost, it almost looks like it's, anyway. So, I guess there's nothing in the code that says yes, and the steel structure that holds up the balconies is also allowed to encroach, but it's not restricted either. The code is silent on that, from what I can see, and I'm paging through it right now. That's where I'm looking.
But let's be clear about the intent of the code as well as the code itself. It was about keeping the setback and not having the building encroach into the setback. And now we have large steel beams sitting in the setback.
So what I would suggest is to see if there is a way that the applicant can, maybe the architect, I'm not sure if you've closed the public hearing yet, can speak to whether those can be cantilevered. That might resolve your issue.
Well, it'll fundamentally change the design. I mean, and part
again, I think the way that we're reading the code is that is permitted. So, but we can ask.
May I interject and just ask one question? The locations of this structure, have they moved or changed from the previous hearing?
No.
Okay, thank you.
We were unclear as to how the reduced unit size and the reduced mass would be addressed. The unit sizes were reduced, but the mass was not.
But the structure was still there. The structure has not changed. Those columns holding up those balconies is consistent from before. So it really goes back to interpretation of projection. And are those columns that hold up the balcony considered part of the projection or part of a building, as you seem to be interpreting it, Chair Hoopengarner?
Well, it's structure. It's a very large steel beam, 3 very large steel beams. So that is, and to address, the visual mass of the thing.
I will say that I support the idea of reducing the mechanical room so we have more permeable space, but I'm okay with the projections as presented.
So to address that issue, Derek, if you can go to A201. You see that this mechanical goes right up virtually to the lot line. And back to permeability, there is none here. There is a nominal amount of permeability and a massive amount of mechanical room that could be significantly pulled back many feet and give an additional ability to put in-ground landscaping and get some green points for some real canopy trees in the ground. So,
I mean, it would make sense to bring it back to the setback.
absolutely.
You know, I think that would be a clear place to delineate it.
Mm-hmm.
With the parking structure directly underneath that, would that still be considered permeable?
No, but it would give us significantly more, 10 feet of additional soil, perk, ability to support large trees, etc.
Agreed.
It wouldn't be quote unquote in ground.
Right, it would be planters, correct? 3 foot.
No, it wouldn't necessarily be planters. You would have the entire story effectively of that mechanical storage room that you could have soil in addition to the 3 feet on top of it. So you potentially have 13 feet worth of soil.
Oh, I see.
3 feet.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think that would substantially improve the project and allow for significantly better landscaping than currently exists.
I'd like to say, I'd agree. I think this would be a nice improvement. And I had concerns about relationship to the setback lines as well. So I appreciate all the commissioners that are discussing this and concur. Just for the record.
That being said, I still do not like the parking. I do not like the cars encroaching into the drive path. I think, to Commissioner Vincent's point, that parking space number 12 is just a hot mess. Getting out of there is going to require a 5-point turn at a minimum. And I don't feel very comfortable with encouraging this type of layout. I think that there were opportunities missed. Having a trash room right at the front of your lobby entrance is just baffling to me. Why that trash room wasn't moved to the backside of the building and the elevator scooted down, that would have given you a lot more room for the parking, and you could have modified the parking in a way to make those spaces actually accessible. I've used to own a condo and had one of those trash chutes, and that thing reeked to high heaven. And having that right at your entranceway, to me, is just mind-boggling as to why that would be something that you would envision. Maybe the architect can speak to how that could be mitigated, but the minute you open that trash room door, the smell is, especially on a nice warm summer day, is quite fragrant. And it's right at your fancy entrance. I mean, I think that there's some real opportunities missed here. I appreciate the fact that this is a very complicated piece of land and has required some creative thinking, but I think that there were opportunities that could make this project significantly better.
sorry to cut in. Could I respond to a few of these questions?
Yes, we can reopen the public comment portion of the hearing. If you have suggestions, ideas on ways to improve this.
Well, let me talk about the balcony at the corner. We can certainly pull the columns back and make that balcony smaller. We thought it was a great feature for the project. And that I think is possible. Or we could cantilever some beams or something like that. Structurally, I'm not gonna, promise that, but I think that's one thing. But the other thing about the mechanical room and all of that is that otherwise you would be holding 10 feet of dirt on top of this parking structure, which really doesn't make sense. If I can achieve what is required by code and don't compromise the building by holding 10 feet of dirt, which is huge, in this building, why should I do it? So I think those 2 points are what I could suggest. And the trash is not near the entrance lobby. It has a door and it's only a trash chute. It's not in a closed corridor where you could smell the trash. So I think that has been addressed. So I don't know how you read this. And we certainly, in that corner balcony, we couldn't really add more column. It really affect the look of the building. And since, we can't really relocate that elevator, I wish you were with us when we started this project.
I was.
All different ways. And this was the best solution, which could solve a lot of issues. You move the elevator one place and it affects everything else. Nothing else fits on this lot. So I don't know how to, make the commissioners happy in some of these respects. But, as an architect who's had 40 years in the business and have worked with known architects before having my own practice, I can say that we have tried our best to resolve the problem. And we certainly, when we realized that the parking was an issue, we resolved it. If one parking spot, especially in the middle, sticks out a little bit, you still have your 24-foot minimum drive on. You don't need more than that. So if one parking is sticking out, but it's in the middle where the turning radius allows you to do that, there is no issue there. It just appearance look, if you look at that, it looks that way. Also, I wanted to address the parking, which, we're providing parking per code, and the staff is asking us not to have guest parking on the street or dedicated parking on the street. So I think that issue is really resolved as far as we're concerned from our side. So I think it has, we have tried to achieve the best that we could as far as this was concerned. And, I put my 40 years of reputation online to come up with a better design. I really don't know what to say. That's about all I have to say about this.
Mr. Mabasser, can I ask a question? Did you say that you would be able to move the structure of those balconies a third of the way back and cantilever the rest so that the structure is actually more within the setback?
It won't look good. You know, it's going to be what we call is a no hand architecture. You know, there's nothing holding this thing up. And, you know, the effect of wrought iron sitting on a column, it's beautiful. I mean, that's how it was done and how it's done today. You know, if you try to cantilever something, it's just going to look artificial.
I would agree. I mean, it definitely, the support structures are part of the design. They are part of, you know, the Parisian effect, if you will.
Exactly.
You know, I understand that, but I'm trying to address the code and having structures in our setbacks. So
But it's interpreted.
But you have people from the codes. I mean, your code people that are enforcing this, they're saying that this is possible.
Right.
You know, they're agreeing with it.
I mean, I guess for me, I'm just trying to understand what we're trying to achieve. Because now that he's explained, you know, the 10 feet of soil sitting on top of the parking structure, which I hadn't flipped that page. And when Commissioner Vincent brought it to our attention, I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Mabasser just identified that. So what are we fighting for here? You know, it's like if we are in agreement that the support structure for the balconies are more aesthetic as presented than trying to cantilever the entire balcony, then I would go with a project as presented.
My only problem is the code and just the interpretation of the code. And
Can I
Jennifer?
jump in really quick? I'm just going to share my screen quickly to show this section of the code with the projections into yards, if I may. This is the second time I've shared the code today. Can you see it now? Or no?
No.
It's almost there. It's almost there. How about now?
Thinking hard, thinking very hard. Yay.
Okay, good. All right. So this is the table here that is allowed projections into setbacks. And here is a diagram, figure 3-7, that shows examples. And it kind of gives us a house that gives examples of what is meant by the different projections. And here we can see where a porch is supported by columns. And I get that this isn't the same thing, but it has the same description in the table under here. If you go down to porch, it can be covered. It doesn't. Mm-hmm.
Would you just tell us where you are in the code? So, because we're looking at pretty dang tiny. If we can pull it up on our own computers.
It is, and I should know the citation by heart, but I don't. 19.20.150, setback measurements and projections into yards.
20.
And
it's nice if the code were all in the right places.
Yeah, here we go.
20.150. Okay. Yep.
Got it. Okay, so this is the section that tells us how we measure setbacks in all different situations and what can go into those setbacks. So if you scroll down to here, this is letter, letter E talks about allowed projections into setbacks. It references figure 3-7, which is this, and table 3-2, which is allowed projections into setbacks table. So, so the language around, like I mentioned earlier, the language about the setback projection for balconies, I mentioned it doesn't talk about support structures specifically.
But it does say above first floor. It does say above first floor.
Okay. Well, let's get through the support structures and then we can address that. So we've got porch, deck, and landing is allowed to go into the setback, and that is referenced up here in this porch, and the porch does have supports. So from here, since this image doesn't have balconies, but since the description is similar, we're interpreting this to mean that the support structures for the balconies, similar to support structures for a porch cover, are allowed to go into the yards the same distance as the structure that's being called out in the table. So if a balcony can go 4 feet, then its support structures could also go 4 feet into the setback. Now, your other question was about the.
Could I ask a quick question, Jennifer?
Yes, of course.
So are you looking at did you say porch, deck, and landing from table 3.2? It says, because that one says covered not exceeding 14 feet in height.
Yes. So what I'm doing is I'm just drawing a similarity here between how it talks about the porch and how it talks about the balconies. Neither case does it call out specifically the support structures, but we have an example here that shows that support structures for a projection are included into that projection. Does that help? So that's where we're coming from, because the code is silent on whether the support structures for a balcony can also encroach, but because other similar projections can with their support pieces, we're using that to say that the balconies are the same. And then, does that make sense, Commissioner Lombardi?
To some degree, yes. It's a little vague.
It's not perfect. It would be great if the code said yes and also the support structures, but in 2001 when this got written, I guess they weren't having the foresight to see us sitting here tonight. And then Chair Hoopengarner, what was your other question about the first floor? I'm gonna unshare for a sec.
Before you leave that page, can you scroll back up to figure 3.37? So, but what I'm seeing in this figure, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's an arrow between it says side setback, minimum required side setback. And there's an arrow between that line, which is the property line, and the side of the house. But it's not really referencing the front of the house, which is where those columns are. It's more showing you all these examples on the side.
Yep. This porch is showing a porch projection. I'm not sure why they didn't call out that line there. Again, I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah, it still makes it confusing.
Well, and that's why
I guess
and that's why we have to make interpretations. The zoning ordinance can't address every single thing possible that someone can come up with. And so that's why we have to do interpretations and try to make our best understanding of things. If you look at the definition of structure, which got us into this thing, it's anything that's put together. So everything about a building is a structure. So that would be an inherent conflict in the zoning ordinance saying you can't have a structure in the setback when a balcony is a structure. So anything you put in any projection into the setback is a structure according to our definition. So we always are having to interpret things when there's fine lines like this. And so, while this image doesn't show that the setback curves and goes around both sides, we do know that front porches are allowed in setbacks. And so this image also shows that a front porch can be covered. And so we've made the interpretation that supports for these objects, structures, are okay. And also we have the ability to, if it's also part of the architectural design or architectural projection, we've interpret architectural projections, which are structures, to be able to go into setbacks and projections in order to make the buildings more interesting than what they would be otherwise.
So thank you, John. And since we do have our city architect here, and this seems to be an architectural conversation, perhaps we could have Mr. Abramson weigh in on this subject.
You really want to complicate matters, don't you?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, I think, I'm speaking from an architectural perspective. I think there's a distinction between balconies and decks. And, what is to the west of this area we're talking about are clearly balconies. They're horizontal projections that extend off of a building. I would say these are actually roof decks, or I'm sorry, decks or terraces that are on the corner that you're discussing with the structure. My concern in designating them as balconies is that, let's say what comes before you is a 6-story building with balconies projecting, and they want to connect all the balconies with columns up the entire facade. And that's just called supporting structure for the balconies. That would be, a very different thing. So from a classification standpoint, I think the operative thing is that, architecturally, that these are decks, which are allowed projections, at least the ones that we're talking about on that corner. And to me, that's more close to the intent than a balcony in this case. So that's my 2 cents.
So what are you saying?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that decks are allowable projections, and that's what should be operative. That that portion. I think, Jennifer, do you disagree with that or not? In terms of decks are still allowed projections in the code.
They're restricted more by definition to be something a little bit different than this. But
are you saying that the ground floor is a deck and above that are balconies?
Yeah, I think anything close to the ground that is a terrace, like that lowest level with those columns, are really more of a deck off the first level.
I would agree with that.
So
the rest, I would say,
porch deck or landing uncovered except by arbors and gazebos or trellises more than 12 inches above grade, but not above the first floor level, unenclosed other than by an open work railing, has a maximum projection into the setback on the street side of 60 inches.
I would actually point you to the line above that, which is porch deck landing covered.
Also, the definition of a balcony is an ordinance. And it says a platform on the outside of a building's upper floor, enclosed by a low wall, railing, or privacy screen, but otherwise open to the air. The frontage of the balcony is determined by its longest edge. A square balcony is subject to more restrictive requirements. Balconies may have a permanent overhead coverings or may be open. Balconies shall not have full height walls for at least one side. So they pretty much fit the balcony because it's a platform. Those are platforms.
But I agree for the bottom floor, it fits the covered deck projection.
So 72 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Into both the street side and the front.
Let's see, where's the? I'm. I would defer to Derek on this because he has spent more time with these plans as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The first floor, it relates more to a deck and the above would be more of a balcony. And the deck technically would actually be able to encroach more than a balcony can, but either way, I think they're both, whether deck or balcony, defined either way they still comply with the allowed projections into the setback.
Perhaps this could be just a little bit more confusing. Okay, so Rick, you're saying that this complies with code then?
I think it's up to the planning staff to make that call in terms of code compliance. I think I can just give you my interpretation of the language of what a balcony and deck would be.
Okay. That answers my question then. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? There being none, do we have any motions on the floor?
I'm going to move the project forward and approve it as per staff's recommendation.
And to close the public hearing, because I think the chair reopened it.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will close the public hearing, and we have a motion on the floor to approve the proposal as recommended by staff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second from Commissioner Carviero. Is there any discussion? There being none, Commissioner, David Gillig, would you please call the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Vinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lombardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Carvalero,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jones,
Yes.
Chair Hoopengarner,
Yes.
and the motion carries 5 ayes, noting Commissioner Dutta absent and Commissioner Thomas absent. And let me share my screen real quick here. The appeal process, the resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you, David. Let's move on to item 11, new business. The Planning Commission subcommittee appointments. So it seems like we just did this yesterday. Oh yeah, we did. But we will revisit the subject for our new term for the next year. So these will be appointments to subcommittees for terms through June 30th of 2022. Except the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee will run through December 9th of 2021 as currently authorized. So let's begin with design review. I have 0 changes to make. I will continue to serve as chair, and Commissioner Carviero and Commissioner Lombardi have graciously agreed to continue to serve an additional year as that subcommittee. The Long Range Planning Projects Subcommittee, we will also maintain this current configuration with Vice Chair Jones serving as the chair of that subcommittee, with Commissioner Dutta and Commissioner Vinson continuing to serve their respective roles on that subcommittee. The Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee, again, I am planning to make no changes with Commissioner Jones serving as the chair of that subcommittee, Commissioner Lombardi and myself serving as the body of that subcommittee. The 1343 Laurel Avenue Visions Concept Committee, we are going to continue with Commissioner Caballero and Commissioner Dutta on that committee, and add Commissioner Thomas, who has now said she's available to serve on subcommittees and committees, to that body. And finally, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, Commissioner Thomas, I'm going to appoint as the member, and I will volunteer to serve as the alternate should it be needed on that committee. And then that leaves the Census 2020 Complete Count Committee, which staff is recommending that we disband. And I say yes, considering that thing is done. And with that, Unless there are any questions, that is our new business. Let's move on then to item 12, unfinished business. There is none. Item 13, excluded consent calendar. There is none. Item 14, items from staff, the planning manager's update. Ms. Alkire, you're up.
Good evening. Okay, so we've got a special meeting coming up on July 29th, which is not a normal planning commission date. It's the 5th Thursday. So for anybody listening, make note of that. It will be for discussion of the housing element draft. And that's the only item on that night. On August 5th, which is a regular meeting, we will have 2 billboards, one at 8901 Sunset and one at 9009 to 9015 Sunset. 8901 Sunset is the whiskey, and 9009 to 9015, I don't know why I can't say that, are the Roxy and the Rainbow Bar and Grill. And so those are 2 billboard applications. And we'll also hear an application for a 5-story, 17-unit apartment building at 1301 to 1307 Fairfax. On August 19th, we have an application for a new bar on Sunset at 9159 Sunset, and then 2 other billboards, 8497 Sunset and 9165 Sunset billboard applications. And then on September 2nd, it looks like we will be hearing a major amendment to a hotel development at 1040 La Brea. I can go through subcommittees upcoming if you want to do that now. So for the Planning Commission Design Review Subcommittee, the July 22nd meeting was canceled. And the next regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be on August 26th. It'll have updates to the Melrose Triangle Mixed Use Project, so that they're coming in for major amendments on that, as well as a new project. It's not an amendment, it's a new project at 8615 West Knoll Drive. So there was an application a couple years ago for that site. This is a new one. And we will have on September 9th, which is typically a Sunset Arts Subcommittee meeting night, we will have actually a Design Review Subcommittee meeting, I believe, and I'm putting a mental note to ask something in a minute, but on September 9th, we'll hear major amendments to the Robertson Lane Mixed Use Project. So we've got back-to-back major amendments to 2 big projects. And then we don't have anything scheduled after that. So, and I just wanted to check in with David Gillig on whether we are a go on that September 9th subcommittee meeting.
The September 9th, I was just informed this afternoon by Laura Yelton and Antonio that there is an item for the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee. So the Robertson Lane will be heard on the 4th meeting of
September 23rd?
Yes.
September 23rd. Okay, so I apologize for the confusion. That was late breaking. So it turns out that will be on September 23rd instead. Okay, and then moving on to the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee, we've got July 8th, that has already passed. August 12th is the next meeting. It's 8501 Sunset. And then it looks, and then it looks like there will be a policy design discussion. I'm not sure what that is. And then for the Planning Commission Long Range Planning Projects Subcommittee, we don't have any items for August or September, but for October, we will be looking at the updates to the West Hollywood West Design Guidelines. Did you have any questions about upcoming items? Okay, well, that's all I have for you, unless there's questions for me.
Very good. If there's no other questions for Ms. Alkire, we'll move on to item 15, public comment. David, do we have any applicants for the opportunity?
Chair, I received no public comment for this item. There are a few callers still left on this with us. If they'd like to make a general comment at this time, please star 9 for I know that you would like to make a statement. But other than that, Chair, it looks like we may be all clear.
Okay, thank you, David. Item 16, item A, commissioner comments. There being none, I will move on to item B, subcommittee management. Do we have anything there? I will chip in my one item. Jennifer, I didn't quite catch the date, but I hear that 8615 West Knoll is back in the mix. And that's just right around the corner from me. So I will be recusing myself from that item in the subcommittee. I think you said that was August 26th. It doesn't really matter.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
August 26th.
Okay, so that's it. If there is nothing else, I will hereby adjourn this planning commission meeting.
I have one item.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Lombardi.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hoopen-Gardner. August 26th, I just wanted to flag, I may be away.
Ooh,
So-
then that's going to be a problem because that would leave only one commissioner to hear that item.
Yes. So I'm not sure how that's normally handled, but maybe we could work out a solution.
Well, we had denied the option of alternates. So back in the day, we had alternates to sub in for these things, but that is no longer available to us.
Chair
So-
Hoopen, are you not here on August 26th?
I will be here, but I will have to recuse myself from the
Oh,
item that 8615 West Knoll. I can hear the Melrose Triangle item, but the West Knoll item I can't, and that would leave only you.
Got it. Yeah,
I
sorry.
also would say that the Melrose Triangle, is a fairly substantive item, and I would love a full complement of our body on that item. So, staff, I'll leave it to you.
When, Commissioner Lombardi, when would we know if you aren't going to be able to make that meeting?
I'd say it's 90%. If you'd like, I can confirm that tomorrow.
That would be great because then we can look at our schedule.
Okay.
And perhaps we should have uncanceled the one for next week.
We can potentially look into special meeting dates, perhaps. But we can talk about that next week. And luckily, we do have a meeting coming up. So.
Okay, Commissioner Vincent.
I will be out of state, August 18th through the 30th.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm going to be out of state for the month of August, but I'll still be able to partake in the meetings because of Zoom, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so these meetings are important, so I just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if Commissioner Lombardi is in a business meeting and he can't attend because he can't attend, then that's another conversation.
That's what I would like to check on.
Technically, we could have insisted that Commissioner Jones get off the beach in Greece and come to our meeting last week, but we didn't, and I will begrudge her that for the next year. No, I'm teasing. So yes, obviously you can attend virtually should that be available to you. I will not be available on the August 19th Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Jones has agreed to substitute in for me. I will be at a family funeral on that date, and so I will be not available. So we're back to August 26th and design review and the fact that we're going to be severely impaired. And I will.
So we'll check, after we confirm, then we can check to see if we can have an alternative date for that when more people are available.
And especially given that the Melrose Triangle item, I'm sure will involve a considerable public comment component. I think that's a really significant item to make sure that we make it as public and as transparent as possible. Okay, well, that's more housekeeping than we've done in a long time. If there's nothing else, I will then hereby adjourn this meeting of the Planning Commission to its specially scheduled next session of Thursday, July 29th, 2021, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Via this same Zoom station. With that, everybody have a good week, and I'll see you 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.